I think we can have an interesting evening. Just to improve everything and so everybody can hear what's going on, there will be roving microphones, and when you have the microphone, please hold it close to your mouth, otherwise it doesn't work too well. So close to the mouth if you've got the microphone in your hand. Right, now then, and the other thing is, if you haven't signed in already, would you please do so before you leave, otherwise you won't get a copy of the minutes and you won't get an invitation to the next meeting via email. So if you do that, that would be very helpful. So then, with those few introductory remarks, I'm going to pass now to Inspector Ferry, who will bring us up to date on last time's priorities and a little bit more besides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just an early warning for you. You are being filmed by, the audience is being filmed by this camera here. If there's anybody in the audience that does not want to be filmed, because we're screening it live on the internet at the moment, if you come over to that side where Will is, you won't be filmed over there. It's a static camera, so it's filming right down the middle, so it'll get all of you. But if you want to be not on camera, please go over where Will is. Sorry, Will. Right, my part in this for now, I've got several parts, but my part for now is to talk about recorded crime in Haverhill, Haverhill Town. So far this year, and we do our crime year from April the 1st, and then so it's virtually a whole year now. So far this year we've had 1,494 recorded crimes in Haverhill. Our 3-year average at this time of year should be 1,807. So we've had over 300 crimes less in Haverhill this year than we would have had the average of the previous 3 years. Some of the particular crime categories we've got: violence against the person, this year 315, average of 3 years 337, so that's down. Sexual offences, so far in town we've had 26 this year, average is 30, so we're below that. Acquisitive crime, in other words all sorts of types of thefts, 627, 3-year average is 772, so we're nearly 150 below what I'd expect to see at this time of year, so that's really good. Other burglaries, 94 so far this year, and that's things like sheds and garages. 3-year average, 130, so we're below that again. Vehicle crime, so somebody comes in the middle of the night and breaks into your car. We've had so far 114 this year. 3-year average, 193, so again, that's way down. Criminal damage and arsons, so far this year, 104. 3-year average, 479. So we're massively down on that crime category, which is good. And then finally on the lower scale is total ASB incidents. So far this year we've had 948. Our 3-year average is 1,397. So again, we're massively down on that. So all in all, that's a fairly decent picture. I do need to talk now though about categories where crime has gone up, and I'll do that now. Domestic burglary, which is always the first thing that I look at when I look at crime stats. We've had 70 so far this year in Haverhill Town. Our 3-year average is 56. And a lot of that is down to a particular crime spree that we had. And you'll have seen from the front page of the papers that the person responsible for that crime spree is now locked up for the next 4 years. So I'm expecting that total now to come down. Shoplifting, we've seen quite a big rise. So far this year we've had 169. Our 3-year average is 142, so that is quite a spike, and we're looking at putting plans in place to combat that. And then lastly, on the increases really, we've had 99 drug offences in town, and our 3-year average is 60, so that's gone up quite a bit. A lot of that I put down to proactive work by police officers, conducting search warrants, knocking doors in, and also conducting searches of people in the street. When we find drugs on people or in a house, it obviously then becomes a crime. So in one way, it might sound a little bit perverse, I'm actually quite pleased that we've got more drugs offences that we've found. We are going to talk a fair bit about drugs tonight, I think, but that's the crime report. In general terms, very, very happy. What I'm also going to tell you is our detection rate, which is another thing the inspector always has a look at. In Haverhill Town, it's 40.2%, which is really, really excellent. We're solving 4 out of every 10 crimes. We've got a high detection rate for many of the categories as well that I've just mentioned. For example, we've got the highest detection rate in the whole force. All the little police stations around Suffolk, we've got the highest detections out of any of them for sexual offences and also for domestic burglary. So for two of the five most important crime categories, Haverhill has got the highest detection rate in the entire force. So generally, a very good picture in terms of crime.
Good evening, everyone. My role is just to update you on our SNT priorities that you set for us at our last meeting. Just a very quick reminder, we had illegal parking in Haverhill High Street, speeding vehicles on the major routes into Haverhill, and the targeting of cyclists without lights. Taking the first one then, we've taken enforcement action again around illegal parking in Haverhill High Street. Positive in terms of the amount of work that the team has put in relation to 405 fixed penalty notices, i.e. parking tickets being issued for various parking offences in the high street. That said, that sort of clearly shows that the people using the high street vehicles are continuing to do so regardless of the sort of message that we're trying to send out. And I very much say, I very much see it myself when I do issue tickets in the high street or speak to the motorists there, still completely unaware of the legislation around that. So yeah, so 405 tickets issued by the SNT for the last 3 months. Speeding vehicles. First thing to say on that, one of the issues that I faced is that only police officers can conduct those speed checks because of the powers that the PCSOs have or don't have in this case. So that sort of halved my ability to sort of put people out on this one. Although we did 22 separate speeding checks. Of the checks that were carried out, just a quick look on here, we did 9 on Ratting Road, 3 on Bergamot Road, 2 on Bumpstead Road, 2 on Chivers Road, 1 on the bypass. Okay. 2 on Hollands Road and 2 on Dudgery Hill. Of all those checks, we issued 23 people with verbal warnings, 4 fixed penalty notice for excess speed, and 7 people were sent on speed awareness courses. If you're not aware of those, when they fall between a certain category of speed, i.e. not the higher end of speeds, they get the option of being dealt with through this process. They still have to pay to go on the course, and it takes about 4 or 5 hours, but it's more of an educational tool rather than an enforcement one. You'll see in the press this week as well, Mark Isaac from the SNT set up an operation involving students from Couples Primary. He tied in with their road safety awareness. The first task for them was to complete some leaflets to be given to speeding motorists. And then on Friday, we were on Ratting Road with a selection of students from the school. We conducted a speed check. Once we'd identified a speeding motorist, we stopped them, carried out various checks, assessed their suitability for what we then wanted to do. They were then given the option of either being dealt with by a fixed penalty notice or going on the speed awareness course, or on this occasion, they had the option of being interviewed by the school children at the side of the road and just to assess how they it was an educational thing from both parts. Initially, I think some of the motorists thought, oh, yeah, my lucky day, this is a good option. But once the children started asking them their questions, they soon realised how sort of hard-hitting it was and how it could impact on the children of the area. So that went very well, and there'll be quite a bit of that in the press this week. Then finally, the bike lights priority. We tackled that by initially our colleagues within the media gave us some good coverage of our priority around that. We produced a poster which was published in the media and also circulated to the larger employees within the employers within the town to display in the workplace. We set up a number of operation evenings specifically targeting people cycling without lights. Initially issued with warnings. over 3 months, 31 warnings were issued. The details of these people were recorded so that they weren't issued with a warning again. 3 fixed penalty notices or fines were issued, which are £50 a time, of the people that sort of didn't really get the message the first time. St Edmundsbury Community Safety Partnership very kindly agreed to fund some additional lights for us, and we produced a voucher that we could issue to people that were stopped in the street for £5 off. And we sort of worked with Chapman's in the High Street to be able to do that. For various reasons, that took us a little bit longer to sort of sort out the finer details, so we'll be continuing with the issuing of the vouchers up until the end of March. And so that's where we are with those. Begin.
Brilliant. Now we come to the most interesting part of the night. We're going to discuss potentially some new priorities. The 3 priorities we've just discussed, if people at the meeting and people online vote for those to be the same next time, then that's what they'll be. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through many of the emails that have come in via the website from people over the last 3 months to discuss new priorities. And then we're going to go over to Aaron to see if anyone else has put priorities in. I believe there's been a rash of people sending things through over the last sort of hour or so. And then we're going to get all of the priorities that you may or may not have written down as well. If you bring those to the front at the right time, then Tim and I will thrash those into 9 or 10 of the most popular ones. We'll stick them on the board, and much as last time, it's then a question of getting people online to vote. I think you've all got your 3 stars already, and then stick your 3 stars on what you think are the 3 best priorities. And then after a few minutes, we'll have the vote, and that's what we'll carry forward.
You're not going to take any questions from the
I don't have a massive problem with that, but we have got a sort of set thing. What would you like to know?
Thanks, John. Just wonder how many actual hours are allocated for the high street parking aspect. How many actual hours are allocated each day? Being is it a top SNT priority?
We don't ever allocate actual hours because it's very fluid of what we actually have to do during our business day. So it'd be very difficult for me to say for 4 hours a day you'll be up there doing that. All of the team are tasked to do the priority, and as you can see, having issued 400 tickets as opposed to the 200 on the previous month and the sort of single or double figures on the previous priorities, you can see there's been a lot of effort put in over the last few months.
The only reason I asked that is because I spoke to one of the PCSOs on Friday, 28th of February, and I asked them how long they spend in the high street, and they said, oh, only about an hour because they have other things to do. And an hour out of the sort of their day is not really a great priority, is it, surely?
They've got 3 priorities on here. They've got a lot of other things that Gary and I tasked them with. Kayla, you're one of the PCSOs we're talking about. Do you want to just grab a mic and explain how you would issue tickets, how it fits into your day?
Thank you. I literally do about an hour. That's as much time as I can devote to it. I've got too much to do. We've all got masses of work to do, but I probably issued about 200 plus of those tickets on my share. But we have a town PCSO that's in the town all the time, and that's Les, and he's generally hanging around somewhere in the town. So the town is covered most of the time.
How many would you do during a day?
Between 7 and 10.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. While we're taking questions, is there anyone else at this time who's got a question? Okay, what I'm going to go on to do then is to read through the priorities that have come through via the website. This is from Linda Bunch, and she says, parking by some parents at the top of Crowland Road whilst waiting for their children to come out of school needs looking at. Parking on the brow of the hill and opposite a junction. I'm not going to comment on any of these, I'm just going to read them through for you to listen to and agree or otherwise. This is from Jeff Turner. And he's talking about vehicles parked on the corner of Hollands Road, particularly lorries, forcing traffic coming around the roundabout and onto Hollands Road into the middle of the road. That is one that's come to me from other people as well. And then from Nicola Dylon, I think it is, she's talking about parking at all schools in Haverhill, particularly bad habits of parents. So that's another one that has come up before. So that's the parking ones that I've grouped together. The next one are the drug-taking ones that I've grouped together. This comes from Susan Jenner. She says, the increasing number of adults and young adults openly smoking marijuana in public places. She says as early as 7:30 in the morning she sees people. And I think, Susan, are you here? Do you want to just talk about that very quickly?
Hi. Yeah, I come out of my house at roughly 7:20 in the morning. I have two men, regularly walk past my house, openly smoking marijuana. Now, I feel that this is not just to my area, it's all over the place. I went down the Wreck with my grandchildren on Sunday, and there was 8 youths sitting right near the park, openly smoking marijuana. Now, forgive me for saying this, but in an area like that, shouldn't there be some police presence to try and protect the children that are in that playground? You know, it doesn't seem like it would be a hard job for a police officer to sort of go around that area just from time to time. You know, the children that were playing there must have been able to smell that substance. Must have been.
I think you are entirely right. And if I could direct my police officers to be either on the Wreck sorting out druggies or up the high street giving out tickets, I would 100 times out of 100 go for your priority.
I agree.
And then also in terms of drugs, Wendy Williams, better policing of the recreation ground with regard to drug taking. So that's exactly the same as the ladies just talked about. You did send another email also about drug taking on the Wreck. So that's that. And then lastly, of the grouped ones, it's to do with boy races and spinning. From Michelle Smith, she says, boy races in the evenings and Rookwood Way, revving engines, racing and spinning noisy exhausts. I think there's a new trend called spinning, which I think is going round and round roundabouts and leaving your back end out and revving up really fast. From Tony Brown, antisocial behaviour by young car drivers in Homefield Road and related speeding on the bypass. From David Housey, he talks about Chivers Road being used as a racetrack. He says in the past 3 months only once has a police car been seen in Chivers Road. Nicola Dylon, she says the cars racing up and down Homefield Road and Greenfields Way of an evening. She said the noise really carries, and there are drivers that drift their cars. Again, that's what I think she means by the spinning bit, that's going round and round the roundabout. She mentions the roundabout outside Clements Primary School as being particularly bad for them doing that. And then lastly, in terms of the boy races, it's one from Mark Turley, and he is saying much the same thing. He lives at the top of the Clements Estate, Greenfield Way, and he's plagued by cars revving up Boundary Road, Faulkner Road, Homefield Road and Greenfields Way. And again, he mentions they're practicing drifting around the little roundabout by the school, so that does sound like a particular problem. The last ones that we've got that are coming from the website for now, these are all different ones. They're not sort of lots of people saying the same thing. One from Debbie Plummer. She's saying she's concerned at the number of vehicles with either one headlight working or badly adjusted headlights, particularly between Haverhill and Clare, she says. Lorraine Mason, she's saying, I feel the police in Haverhill will be more effective if their station in Haverhill was updated, upgraded and had the same opening times as Bury. Well, we have just gone through a massive refit at Haverhill. We've had a new kitchen and new all sorts of other things. So we're really fit for the next 10, 15 years, I think. So hopefully Lorraine will feel happy about that. Anne Elmer, she's saying local paper boys need to have their bikes checked prior to the deliveries in the morning. And one from Jerry Dockery says, antisocial behaviour, sort out those people who drink cheap wine and beer in the underpasses. And I think that's the underpasses on the Chalkston. And then lastly, one from John Burns, and he's saying, it looks like people are worried about dog excrement around the town, and he's hoping that some other agencies will take part in that to help out the SNT. So that's what's come in over the last 3 months via the internet. If we move over to Aaron, perhaps you'd just like to go through the ones you've got there, Aaron, and then we'll move on to any new ones that we might have in the room.
Okay, so the ones what have just come through on the live comments, we have road racers using Hollands Road and the industrial estate as a racing track, parking outside Samuel Ward School, Westfield and Couples, cars with defective lights, and parking on the Browther Hill and opposite a T-junction at the top of Crowland Road while waiting for children to come out of Place Farm School.
Okay, well that's almost an exact match with ones that have come in over the last 3 months, so it definitely seems like they're popular. Now, I don't know the best way of doing this, whether you want to just talk about your priorities or whether you want to hand them to us for us to talk through. What would you like to do? Okay, just stick your hands up if you've got priorities, and then we'll collect those sheets so we can collate them. Some people might not feel totally confident about reading out their own priorities. So if you want to give them, if you want to talk about them, that's fantastic. If you don't, just give them to John, and he'll bring them up. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, yeah. Good evening. One of the things I'm going to talk about is speeding along Camps Road. Yeah, sorry. Speeding along Camps Road, particularly opposite the Christmas morning surgery, right up to the first pedestrian crossing by the school. One of the ways around this, which I would suggest, is to have like a raised area, a raised bollard type on the road, perhaps opposite or between the old surgery and the new surgery, Christmas mornings. Perhaps that might reduce speeding. And this affects people coming out of the Methodist Church, out of Chantry Road. As they come out, they can't see to the left because there's a whole lot of cars being parked along Camps Road. Cars are also parking along Camps Road on a single yellow line. And I've been walking up and down there, and I found that on the post that says no parking, there's only half a sign there. So people park there. Perhaps something can be done about that as well. There are signs there which says 20 mph, schools, etc., but they just ignore it. So the way around that, I would have thought, is like a raised area along the road between the surgeries.
Okay, that's fantastic. I think, Gordon, you're next.
Thank you. I've raised the issue before about parking outside Samuel Ward School, and it's a new priority now. For the simple reason, I coming past going out to Bury the other week, and there were 7 cars parked there, and as I approached, the lead car pulled away with the driver on their phone, which I didn't think was unsuitable. But also there was 2 other vehicles parked there with the engines running and the drivers were on their phone. So I think that ups that priority. I was going to bring up a point about speeding traffic in Hamlet Road, but I think Mrs. Jenner's priority will take priority over that. Is it possible we can have a police team, perhaps Mark Isaac's going to Samuel Ward, and give some instructions on how to use the zebra crossing at the school, because there's a lot of youngsters just walking out into the middle of the road on their mobile phones, or they got iPads in their ears or whatever it is, earplugs, listen to music, and they're just oblivious to all what's going on around them. And it's unfair to expect drivers to just carelessly walk out into the road. It's unfair to expect drivers to stop 10 feet away, and they should know better. They don't get a priority on that crossing until they're on the crossing. So they need to have a bit more courtesy for the drivers along that area. But I'm concerned about the mobile phone users pulling away there. You know, it's not appropriate.
Okay, is there anyone else in the room who wants to talk about their priority, or has anyone else got sheets that they wish to hand into the front? I've got a pile of sheets here that I'll read through. Pat?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Queen Street. Even tonight, I've noticed there's cars that are parking on the pavement, and they can't even be bothered to park in the 2 slots. So there was 2 slots there, and there was 1 empty space in both of them. But there was 2 or 3 cars that were parking right outside these food shops, and the only way you could get past was to walk in the road. And this is happening quite often when I come up to this art centre especially, and I notice this overnight. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Anyone else in the room?
Good evening. My comment is regarding the use of police time for parking. I would like to say, first of all, I have to hold my hand up and say I've received more than 1 ticket myself, but that's not the reason why I'm commenting this evening. The use of police time, it seems to me, in the reduction of crime generally, is very important. Now, I live across the county border in Sturmer, although I am a daily user and shopper in the town, and I spend business-wise and otherwise a reasonable amount of money in the town. But it seems to me that the best use of police in this town for the reduction of crime is not to be managing parking issues and problems, particularly around the high street. I understand there are some groups with vested interests in keeping the high street to themselves, but surely the use of police is not the right one. And to do that, I would like to give you an example which happened only in the last week. Last Tuesday, and I think Haverhill Police need to be highly commended for the way they dealt with this, in Sturmer, I had a robbery take place on my property during the day, 4 p.m. more or less, and I had to report it. The first thing I had to do was to dial 999. I called the police and I was told I had to contact Essex. Fair enough. I contacted Essex Police, who immediately contacted their colleagues at Haverhill Police Station, who I must say responded within minutes. And in doing so, a thief was captured. And I can say he's a thief because he admitted to being a thief, was taken off by Essex Police, who arrived some 20 minutes or so later, and was charged and is now appearing at, he's a Haverhill man, but he's appearing at Chelmsford Court on the 21st of March, thanks to the police response. Now, I would suggest to some people who are looking to make a priority of parking in the high street a police issue, that they consider this. If you're shopping in the high street and you're living up on one of the estates or out in one of the villages, and your property is being robbed and somebody sees it, they need to be able to phone police and get a response. The response that I got was quick and it was professional. It could not have been the case if more police time was spent walking up and down the high street trying to nick me and others from parking. Now, I would suggest, by the way, that I actually don't always admit, because of my business, that I was actually parking illegally, but that's for a court to decide, as they say. But I would like to thank the police, and I would like you all to consider the fact that perhaps you need a parking warden and not a police officer to deal with issues on the high street.
I couldn't have said that better myself. So thank you very much, Danny, for coming along. I'm delighted you did come along today. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the hall that would like to talk about their potential new priorities? If not, I'll read through the ones that have come to the front here. This is from Keith and Katie Hitchin. And I haven't made this one up. They're saying, continue pressure on illegal parking in the high street, otherwise the situation will not improve. Sue Janet is saying, parking on corners and opposite the junction of Castle Walk and Castle Lane. Town Mayor Roger Andre is saying Greenfields Way, illegal parking on the road and at bus stops, and also parking at all Haverhill schools. That does seem to be quite a theme, the parking outside schools at the moment. Beryl from Kicks is saying parking in Queen Street, which obviously listen to Pat, and particularly from 8 o'clock onwards, limited space and opening of car and van doors, so it's getting quite dangerous. And she's also saying parking at Star Cars in Orchard Close, and they should keep the area clear there. So again, that's 2 parking ones. Councillor Robbins is saying not enough police to tackle needs. I am trying to get more, to be frank, because sometimes we do need more, and I'm trying to get more, but I won't say too much more about that until I get them. And then from Tony Brown, he's saying dog fouling. Most green spaces and parks around Haverhill.
Yeah, I'm still on there. Can you hear me? I can't hear myself. What the gentleman said over there is absolutely right. A policeman should be doing a police job. You shouldn't be patrolling the streets. The Queen Street, everybody knows. I've been nearly knocked over when I leave off work, going up the Queen Street. They're too lazy to go 20 yards to go get their USA chicken. If they're constant offenders, I mean, there's a bloke who always parks there on the post office, and I stand out there with my face, and I said, why are you parking there? It's illegal. I won't use the exact language, but, you know what you said? You said, I've had 10 tickets, I couldn't give a, Now, surely, do you let them get away with it all the time? Constantly? Constant offenders? But if you had more police, you need them everywhere. Everybody has said about the parking of the whole town, not just the High Street to Queen Street, everywhere. Crowland Road, up at the Clements. You can't be everywhere at once. Like we've only got 1 ambulance and 1 paramedic, and we've only got 1 policeman. Perhaps we need a hell of a lot more.
We have got more than 1 policeman, I can assure you that. We have to take some decisions quite often on what our priorities should be, not just the SNT priorities, but what my response police officers should be. I've got a team of SNT officers, I've also got 5 teams of response officers, and every day when I come in, I'm looking at what's happened overnight, what I project might happen over the next week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and what I need my police officers to look at individually. What I'm going to do now is just raise, myself and Gary are going to raise a couple of priorities that we think should be considered in the mix. Some particular crime sort of issues that have happened that we think the public in Haverhill might not even know about, but would be interested in should they be told about them. So, Gary, do you want to do your couple first, and then I'll go on and do my one?
Yeah, as we said, this relates to sort of crime trends that we're currently experiencing, and we have some options on the SNT of how to deal with these if we get the opportunity. The first one, as the Inspector said earlier on, relates to the theft from the shops in the town centre of Haverhill. We've seen an increase in the crime figures, and that's the recorded crime figures, i.e. the ones that the shops report to us, and also the ones that the shops know about themselves. Obviously, during these difficult economic times, this has a big impact on the traders within our town centres. Secondly, the people that commit these type of offences are not the sort of people that we want in our town centres where we're walking with our families and children. And quite often there's violence linked to the detention of these people by either the police or the people within the stores that spot them. So the purpose of bringing this one up is for us to sort of proactively tackle that and reduce the number of thefts. Another priority crime-wise that we've seen recently is around the theft of motorcycles within the town, and you may have seen a few bits in the media. We've also put some bits out on Twitter. They mainly relate to sort of lower powered trails bikes, but basically they're being stolen from in the streets, people's gardens and garages. They're then used in an antisocial manner, typically being ridden around on the Puddlebrook playing fields, on the 1017 and the Ladygate Woods. They're riding the bikes on public footpaths and playing fields, and they're being used dangerously. They also fail to stop for police if we get behind them. So that's a priority that we'd like to put forward as well, theft of the bikes.
And the last one from me, you may have read in the papers or seen on websites, there's been a slight spike in violence related to the collection of drug debts in town, particularly on the Clements and the Chalkston estates. What I'd like to focus the SNT on, again, rather than particular parking issues in the high street, I'd like to focus the SNT on gathering intelligence on those two estates and putting in place some actions that might be able to crack that problem. We've had several people hurt quite seriously over the last 2 or 3 weeks. What's happening typically is that, although you could say, well, they're buying illegal drugs, so that's their fault, but I don't see it that way. They're buying drugs quite often on tick or on credit. The dealers then come looking for the money. The people can't pay, so then the people get quite seriously assaulted by the drug dealers. So I'm looking to put in place, getting the SNT to spend time to try and crack that problem. We are also putting other resources into it, but every little helps really in terms of trying to gather intel and deal with these serious offenders. So that's one that I would recommend to you. We could. That would be one way of doing it. Certainly, it seems to be cannabis that's being taken openly. What I'm talking about is sort of Class A, so you're talking about crack cocaine, heroin, but it's all drugs and it is all in the mix really. So
it's because to have a general crackdown on drugs across the town. And I think if you just crack down on one thing, it pushes it out somewhere else. If you sort of do a holistic approach to everything, hopefully that you'll bear more fruit of that.
Okay, that's brilliant. And what we have also got to consider as well is we might have to take a very quick vote on this, whether we want to consider any of the 3 that we've got currently, whether we want to put any of those forward. It's a little bit strange the way we're going to do it, but I just wonder if anyone is still interested in parking in the high street, and if you in the room and online very, very quickly tell us that is something you want to be allowed to vote on, then Tim and I, when we collate them in a few minutes, will include that in the sort of the 9 or 10 that we're going to put forward to vote. Putting your hand up now doesn't mean that it's going to be a priority. It just means it will be put forward for one of the 9 or 10 that we're actually going to vote on in sort of 20, 25 minutes. So is there anyone in the room that is interested in parking in the high street still being considered?
Councillor Pat Handon said, and the other lady didn't catch her name, so apologies, but the Queen Street issue has always been a major problem. Perhaps some police resources can be directed there. I'm often getting complaints from some shopkeepers that cars are blocking people going into their shops and everything else. So perhaps we could have a bit of a priority along Queen Street. It is a nightmare along there.
Okay, the next one that we've got already is speeding vehicles.
With regard to the car parking, illegal parking in the high street, the result of this means that a traffic order is due to be implemented, which will mean 60% more traffic will be redirected away from the high street and onto Recreation Road, Mill Road, Crowland Road, and the small streets that couldn't take this extra increase in traffic. So we're wondering why the high street is being prioritised over our small residential area.
As I understand it.
Does the Safer Neighbourhood team think that it's going to make our streets any safer?
As I understand it, the plan from SCC, Suffolk County Council, is now on hold. They're going to go out to wider consultation, so that isn't actually going to happen at the moment.
No, but we're still waiting to hear if it will still be implemented. And we don't know when we will know about that. We also don't know how that experiment will be monitored, or how it will be monitored, or how it will be deemed a success or a failure.
Do we have anyone from SCC that's got knowledge of this, is prepared to talk about it? Anne seems to know. Anne's at the back. She'll tell us a bit more about it.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that there is a consultation that does have an end date on it, and I hope that all of the comments against the experimental traffic regulation order that I know that I would think all three of the county councillors have put forward are taken into account, and in fact it was because of the representations by us that they've actually come back and done a wider consultation, because one of the biggest problems with it was that people weren't asked, and the right people in the streets that were going to be affected by the spin-off weren't consulted in the first place, and now they are, and quite rightly so. But I think the residents' problem and issue is that if an experimental traffic regulation order is put in place, they've got no sort of comfort of knowing that if it doesn't work, it will be lifted, and that's something that and I think both the other county councillors are fighting very hard to make sure happens if it does go ahead. But my hope is that with the wealth of comment from the people who are objecting, it won't go ahead in the first place. But I think what underlies all this problem is the lack of a decision about exactly what's going to happen in the high street. And what we can't keep on doing is doing these little cherry pick ideas that actually aren't going to help anybody. They're just going to displace everything. We need to make a decision. We need to look at this properly, and we need to move forward with it, because upsetting different forms of people in the area is not going to help anybody.
Thank you, Anne. I would just say that it's up to the people that are online and the people in this room, but should you decide that the police need to be looking at the high street again for the next 3 months, I can tell you it will not make the blindest bit of difference to parking in the high street. I've been saying exactly the same thing for the past 2.5 years since I arrived here. We issued 202 tickets the previous 3 months, 405 tickets this time. If it doubles again and it's 800 and something, it still won't make the slightest bit of difference. We've issued 3 tickets to one particular person, and when questioned, they said they'd rather spend £30 on a ticket than 30p, or £30 on a fixed penalty ticket than 30p on a car parking ticket. Now that makes no sense to me whatsoever, but that is what people are saying. The £30 that we can issue as a ticket is not enough deterrent to people. So I'm in the lap of the public in this room and online. We'll do what you tell us to do, but I have to say there are far better priorities for us to look at. Gordon, you've had quite a few says, Gordon. We'll give it to someone else.
Back in what Mrs. Williams has said about the redirecting of the traffic, it's not just the areas it's going to, but the roads really aren't wide enough or fit enough, because they're always in a bad state of repair as it is. To put more traffic on them is going to totally break them all up.
As I understand it, it's gone out for wider consultation. Everybody in this room and throughout Haverhill has got their chance to say. The 3 county councillors in the room have all had their views expressed to the county, so I don't think it will happen anytime soon, to be fair. Would I be okay with everyone to move on to the second of the 3 priorities we've currently got going on? Speeding vehicles on various routes in town, including Duddery Hill, Chivers Road, Bergmont Road, Camps Road and the bypass. Is there anyone in the room that's interested in keeping that going? And what I'm talking about here is putting it forward to the 9 or 10 that we're actually going to vote on this evening. Does anyone consider that should still go forward as potentially being voted on? 1, 2. Okay. And the third one is cyclists without lights at night. Is there anyone in the room that considers that should go forward again? 2. Okay, that's lovely, thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to pass you to Tim now.
Peter and I are now going to sort out these into various lists and pick out the 10 which are the most popular, and then from that you'll be asked to sort out the 3 priorities for policing over the next 3 months. While we're doing that, perhaps you'd avail yourselves of a cup of tea, which is up in the corner here, and also while I've got the microphone in my hand, I'd like to draw your attention to a public meeting at Samuel Ward Academy on the 7th of May, when the Police and Crime Commissioner Tim Passmore and the Chief Constable Doug Paxton will be here to hear your views about policing in the area. So it's raising up really what is the SNT public meeting to a higher level. But it's your opportunity to talk to them direct. Thank you.
There's nothing to stop the town centre officer in passing ticketing, but not as a priority. Yeah?
No, nothing to stop them at all. You've heard Kayla there. She does it for about an hour. She does it on her way out to her area, and she does it on her way back to the police station as well. And all the SNT officers will continue to do that. But it wouldn't be a priority. The focus of their time could be spent on some of the more serious issues that we've already talked about here. One last one from Roger, and then you can all have a cup of tea.
For me, that just about says it. You just said that we'll continue to do what we're doing already, but it won't be a priority. You and I both know the fact is every time we've asked for this parking to be a priority, you have just ignored it and it hasn't been a priority. I urge people not to vote for this as a priority again, because we'll be ignored again.
No, I've got to say that's totally unfair. We issued 202 the last 3 months. That's gone up again to 405. So that's 607 in the last 6 months. You can't say that's ignored. When I first came here, you could say it.
You just said it will be exactly the same thing happening and it won't be a priority. So you said yourself that it isn't a priority. You just said it.
It is a priority. It's one of the SNT priorities.
When the priority ceases, you said when the priority ceases, you will continue to do it, and even though it's not a priority. You're not treating it as a priority now. We might just well have it left like that. No, don't make it a priority.
I totally disagree with you. Whether I think it should be a priority is another matter. I don't think it should be a priority. I think the police officers and PCSO should be dealing with more important things. But I can promise you that I put pressure on this chap, and this chap has put pressure on all of his officers to get out down the high street. It's since he's arrived that we've had a massive rise in tickets in the high street. So I think you're being totally unfair there, Roger. I really do.
I can't possibly agree with that. You have just said yourself that you will continue to do exactly what you're doing now. Sending someone on their way out and on their way back to do tickets is not a priority. The fact is it hasn't been prioritised. There's no point in making it priority again because you haven't prioritised it.
Okay, thanks for your view. Okay, if you all want to get a cup of tea, we're going to try and collate these into 9 or 10 for you to actually have a vote on. Right, everybody, thank you very much for your help this evening. We now have got the final results. We had 21 people online voting tonight, so that's definitely made a valuable contribution. Our first priority, our top priority, is parking issues in Crowland Road. No, what am I talking about? No. Our first priority is drug taking and dealing openly in public in Castle Walk, the Rec, and generally throughout the town. That got 22 votes in the room, 15 votes online, a total of 37. Thank you very much. I'm really pleased with that project, so you've chosen well there. Number 2, gathering intel and carrying out enforcement on drug-related assaults on the Clements and Chalkston estates in Haverhill. That got 17 in the room and 8 online, a total of 25. And number 3, parking issues in Crowland Road at the school, Hollands Road, read the lorries at the junction, and at schools in Haverhill generally. And I think a lot of that will be looking at, obviously, Samuel Ward. 8 in the room, 7 online, a total of 15 in total. So we've got 2 drug-related ones and 1 parking issue one. So I think, thank you very much for everybody in the room and online. I think you've made 3 really good choices there. I'm happy with that. Thank you for your help tonight. Thank you.
Just before you all go, Diane would like to have a couple of words.
Thank you. I was just asked by one of my Neighbourhood Watch coordinators in Hazel Close to raise the issue of street lighting. There's quite a few elderly people down there, and they're feeling a bit vulnerable and frightened, and I said I would bring it to the attention of this meeting.
Thank you. That really brings the business of the meeting to a close, unless there are any other burning issues that anybody wants to raise. Thank you for your contribution tonight. I think we've made a real bit of progress, and the online thing is working quite well as well. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.